Today, I want to talk about something I don't usually talk about, which is my experience as a kid and the aftermath of 9/11. There's a certain generation of us that I think have similar experiences but never talk about it. Physicists have observed that when a black hole becomes large enough, it generates a phenomenon called a gravitational wave. And these gravitational waves are powerful, like an ocean wave, bending the space and time of our universe. And they're so powerful as they move along that even galaxies a million light years away can feel that wave's gravitational tug. I was 9 when I watched the World Trade Centers collapse. 9 years old. I was at home, should have been at school, but I was sick that day. And I'd come down the stairs, the television was on. My mother liked to watch Good Morning America every morning, kind of morning news after she'd sent my sisters and I off to school. But I wasn't at school that day, I was homesick. So I walked down the stairs, and the television was on. My mother was in the kitchen. It was on an old square TV, before the 16 by 9 TVs that we're all used to. That's how old it was. It was a little square box. I'll tell you what I saw, because I don't remember what I heard. What I saw when I walked down was I saw one tall building. Tallest building I had ever seen in my life. And it was smoking. Just like a massive cigar. And then there was another tower right beside it. And it was immaculate. It looked totally fine. And I thought, man, those are some tall buildings. And as I watched another small moving object fly straight into that second building that was perfectly still. And as soon as I saw that object, which was a plane, hit that building, it erupted in just a molten fireball of carnage. And I was just standing there in the kitchen, holding a blanket. It was wrapped in a blanket. I was back looking at the tall buildings that were on fire, and I saw people jumping from the windows through the air, head down, back towards the earth. In 2002, an artist, Eric Fleischl, was photographing a model. He's an artist, a sculptor. He was photographing a model for a magazine shoot. And the model was in between takes, just messing around. And she was behind a classic white or colored seamless. You know, when you think of those magazine covers in Vogue or GQ, and they always have one solid block of colors, like a red or a blue, and the model's smiling there. Well, it's usually a massive piece of paper that's rolled out behind the model, and it's rolled down onto the floor and then taped to the floor. So it's quite big. It takes up a quite big surface area. And in between takes of photographing this model, Eric, the model was somersaulting around, just messing around on the ground of the seamless, and he took a photo where she was somersaulting forward. And 2 weeks later, when he was back at his computer looking over the photos he had taken, one photo in particular caught his eye. It was with the girl leaning forward, her neck tilted downward, her eyes closed. And when he looked at that photo, he was reminded of his friend who had perished a year earlier in the World Trade Center. And between thinking about his friend that he had lost, and the woman with her head tucked down, somersaulting with her eyes closed, it reminded him of the people he watched jump too on television. And the extreme choices those people were faced in the last moments of their lives. And he took that photo because it reminded him of the people jumping, and he sculpted that human into a beautiful sculpture called the Tumbling Woman. It's a fantastic sculpture. You've probably never heard of it. It was put on display for 1 week at the Rockefeller Center in New York City, until so many angry letters and death threats for the curator saying it was exploitive art or shock art. They quickly removed it. It lasted 1 week in Rockefeller Center in 2002. It's a beautiful statue. And when asked about Tumbling Woman, Eric said it reminds him of the extremity of choice. That the extreme choices these people were forced into in the last moments of their life. But despite the extreme choices, they chose to exercise that last bit of agency in their life. They still had a choice. And they chose to jump. That's bravery. That's true bravery in my mind. A year later, in 2003, I was at an Atlanta Falcons football game with my dad. Middle school. So it was a Christmas present. I was really into the Falcons. It was my favorite football team. I was into the Falcons because when you were a young boy, birds of prey are cool. So my favorite football team was the Falcons. And we were at this game in Atlanta. It was a home game. We had flown down there. I was there with my dad and a couple of his brothers. It was, funny enough, it was Michael Vick's freshman year. That's how clearly I remember it. And it was quite the game. And during the middle of it, everybody got quiet. And a man got over the loudspeaker in a booming voice. And he said, "Sorry to interrupt the game, but I have a special announcement to make. Please listen. It's just been announced at approximately 2:02 p.m. that the United States of America has declared war on Iraq." And as soon as he got the word Iraq out, people erupted in cheering. There was USA, USA, screams of delight, obscenities. People were dancing up and down, high fives. The entire crowd roared like I had never heard. I remember standing there next to my dad not saying anything. He was deadly silent. It was probably 6 months later, a year later, the United States had invaded Iraq, and the talking heads were on the news, and they were talking about, mission accomplished, the Iraqi army has collapsed, this is a piece of cake. Walk in the park, we're going to get Saddam, no worries, we just got to find him. And I remember my dad, I didn't really understand what was going on at the time, but I remember my dad saying, this is probably going to be a disaster. It's going to collapse into a civil war. This country was held together by a dictator, but it was carved by the British. And he was right. I also remember at Sunday school, right around that time, maybe a few weeks later, when the United States Army captured Saddam Hussein, found him in a dugout, pulled him out of a ditch. I remember being asked as a kid by my Sunday school teacher how I felt about the fact that we had captured Saddam. Was it a good thing? Certainly it was a good thing for the United States. Isn't this a great thing? I didn't have a good answer. I knew it was good that we had caught this bad man, but I didn't understand why he was bad. Then another year passes. We go back to school, and the Rolling Stone magazine arrived in the mail. We used to get, and this is back in the day when magazines used to be shipped to homes. My family liked a good magazine, a little Martha Stewart, a little L.L. Bean magazine, you know how it is. Well, we also got the Rolling Stone magazine. And this particular Rolling Stone magazine, I remember because it had some photos. It had photos of a place called Abu Ghraib. I didn't know where Abu Ghraib was. I read that it was in, the Middle East. But it was a big controversy. The photos were shocking. I remember it was bad. And the fact that it had been revealed that the American military was torturing Iraqi military detainees. I remember the photos. Photos of colored people with black hoods on their faces, chained to concrete walls. I remember that quite clearly. And then I also remember YouTube. When YouTube was fresh and new, and the only thing YouTube was really good for was, listening to music. It's come full circle, honestly. That's now a big part of YouTube again. But in 2005, 2006, that's all YouTube was pirated music. But there was other videos on YouTube, and I remember when YouTube first came out, early high school, there was a video that got released. It was a cell phone video. These were when cell phone videos were rare and grainy and usually quite special. And this cell phone video was indeed special. It was a cell phone video of a man being walked up, and the camera phone was shaking and you couldn't see what was going on, and people were booing, throwing stuff. And a man got up there and they put a rope around his neck. And I pulled the lever, fell. And that was that. That was a photo, that was a leaked video of Saddam Hussein being hung. I remember that too. Later, much later, I moved to New York City, away from the small Midwest town where I grew up and watched the two towers fall to pieces and the Pentagon get obliterated. And when I moved to New York City, something that was very important to me, which I didn't really appreciate until I got here, was the World Trade Center. The Empire State Building is magnificent. It's fantastic to look at. But when I first moved to New York City, I was obsessed with the World Trade Center. It's all I took photos of. The World Trade Center is like a religious experience almost. Once I got my feet on the ground, I really wanted an apartment where I could see the World Trade Center. I don't know why it was so important, but it was. And I eventually bought an apartment where my bedroom window looks directly south at the World Trade Center and where I can see it tonight. I can see both the World Trade Center right now, and I can see two massive beams of blue light extending as far into the sky as I can see. And it was important to me because it reminds me that even though the world makes no sense, there is no logic to this place, to life, that in the end, we collectively will be alright. That we'll rebuild, and we'll rebuild it bigger and better. And there's something reassuring about that. And the only way, I guess, for me to internalize that is to be able to see it. To see that the tower I saw crumble before my own eyes when I was 9 years old now stands even taller outside my bedroom window every night. And it reminds me that even though this world is chaotic and doesn't make sense and is cruel and fickle, that we can move forward and that we'll be alright. We'll be alright. Thanks for watching. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.